National Raceway on the edge of the desert in Southern California, an hour east of Los Angeles. This is just one of the exciting views you'll catch today here at the LA Times Nissan Grand Prix. ESPN presents Racing 85. Brought to you by B.F. Goodrich, makers of high-performance TA radio. We make cars perform. And by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? A big crowd is gathered here in the rugged desert country of Southern California, the setting for Riverside International Raceway. And by California standards, we have an almost perfect day for racing. Sunny and dry, temperatures in the low to mid-80s. Hi everybody, I'm John Burchard, welcoming you to the first of 5 IMSA GT telecasts here on ESPN. We have a tremendous field, 62 cars in all here today, competing in 4 different classes. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Right now, let me bring in my colleague. He is a contributing editor to Motor Trend magazine and an IMSA racing driver himself, Mike Brockman.
John, this is an incredible field, being led by Al Holbert in the 962 Turbo Porsche. In qualifying, the quickest car was John Paul Jr., but his time was disallowed due to a technicality. So he's starting from the 3rd position. Also, we've got 4 classes of cars here running today, and some of the slower cars will cause problems when it turns for the GTP cars. Also, we have 600 kilometers of racing, and that'll create driver changes and fuel stops. So I'll be down in the pits giving you the information as it happens from pit side.
And the field rolls out under the bright California sun. Hot, dusty, windy conditions prevailing here around this 9-turn course of Riverside. And there's a look from inside the B.F. Goodrich camera car. We'll be taking some exciting shots from that position during the course of the day. Now the starting grid. Al Holbert starts on the pole. Pete Halsmer next to him. Row 2, John Paul Jr. in that quick March Buick, and David Hobbs in another Porsche. Row 3, the Jaguar of Tullius, Jim Busby in our camera machine. Brian Redmond in the other Jaguar, Darren Brasfield driving solo. Jim Truman's car now withdrawn, transmission trouble, and next to him, John Kalajian. Bob Aiken in another Porsche, and Jim Adams in the Zero car. And 4 more classes making up this 62-car field. We'll be back with the start of the race after these messages. Round 5 of the 1985 season for GT Racing by IMSA. Cars now moving into turn 9, lining up in rows of 2, preparing for the start. If they look okay, the pace car will be pulling off, and then we'll get the green flag. In just the first 2 rows, we have nearly $1 million worth of race cars. That's how exotic these machines are. The Porsches go for $250,000 a pop. The Marches about $150,000. So, lots of expensive machinery set to go. The pace car is pulling off. The field is getting a little ragged, but we are getting a start. They're accelerating, and there's the green. The race is underway. Moving down to turn 1. Al Holbert in the lead right at the moment. John Paul grabs the lead. In the S, and John Paul moves into first place with Al Holbert right behind him. The field stringing out. Everybody seems to be getting through in proper fashion. Moving through the S's toward turn 6 now. John Paul in front in that 850 horsepower March Buick. Then Holbert. Then Pete Halsmer. Field moving through okay, one by one. Now heading down toward turn 7. John Paul Jr. in the lead. Stringing out and staying close. Around turn 7 they go. Heading now up towards turn 8. John Paul opening up a bit of a lead. Jaguar in 3rd place, that's Brian Redmond. A little bit of smoke coming out of there. And John Paul Jr. has spun. John Paul Jr. has spun out of the lead. The car does not look damaged. So now Al Holbert reappropriates the lead. Mike Brockman, what about that spin?
Well, it's definitely out of character for John Paul Jr. He's in a bad position right now, but it looked like he has a motor running. He'll have to wait for a break in traffic. Another move out of character was David Hobbs's start. David lost about 9 places, so let's keep an eye on him, see if he has car trouble or if he can get back on the hunt.
Around turn 9 they come. Al Holbert, followed by Pete Holzner, completing their very first lap. The rest of the field stringing out behind them. On towards turn 1 and then the S's, and there we are inside Jim Busby's car, taking a look at how it is for the driver as they sprint through this course. Holbert and Halsberg getting close in turn 6. Both of these cars are Porsches. Both of them should be getting around 750 horsepower, so they should be quite equal in that respect.
There is a difference here, John. That second car of Halsmer is on B.F. Goodrich tires. Now, those are Department of Transportation legal tires. They're really not constructed like the race tires, so there is a difference.
Something to note, that's the first time that the BFG car has qualified on the front row. They've been working their way up all season long. Holbert and Halsmer sticking close. Al is one of the most respected drivers in North American sports car racing. He's been champion of this GT Series 3 times, most recently in '83. That long straightaway where the cars turn up 185 miles an hour has a kink to the left toward the end, but they don't let up. They can keep their foot flat on the floor as they head for turn 9 and then get on the brakes. They go into turn 9 about 130 miles an hour, break down to roughly 100, then accelerate again on the way out to about 120. And we have a spin. There's a spin. That's Rick Borlase, an old Porsche 934. Wiped the front of that car right off.
John, I don't see what he's made contact with, but there is debris on the track, and there's a yellow oil flag out, so there's obviously something slick.
David Hobbs working his way up through the field. There are 4 classes running in this race. We asked David about them.
Well, I should be driving a GTP car this weekend, which stands for Grand Touring Prototype, but these are really nothing but racing cars from the ground up. They just incidentally have 2 seats and a windscreen and a roof. But it is a pure bed racing car. Ours is a 2.8 litre capacity with a turbocharger producing about 750 horsepower. There's a number of different power plants out there, all turbocharged: Buick, Datsun, Porsche, Ford, Chevrolet. And these, as I say, are just out-and-out racing cars with a roof. They've got the wings, they've got the underbodies that cause downdraft. Very, very fast and spectacular racing car.
Veteran English driver David Hobbs pressing on as he works his way back toward the front. Another look at the leader, Al Holbert, heading into turn 1, stretching out the lead over the second-place man, Pete Halsmer. Now into the S's where he encounters some traffic. He has to be very careful getting through this traffic because there's a big speed differential among these cars. Passing by the polymotor machine, and there's a spin. Tim Kokonis is spun. Al Holbert takes to the sand. A couple of other cars do too. There's a big dust cloud, Mike.
John, this could be a very dangerous situation. It's just like on the highway. If you drive into smoke or a fog bank, you can't see a thing. It could be potentially dangerous.
Everybody getting through okay so far. Some cars using the pavement, some cars getting out in the sand. A lot of dust there. Here's a second look at it. Tim Kokonis on the inside hangs a wheel over the edge, then begins the spin. Al Holbert gets off the gas onto the brakes, flames coming out from the turbo motor overrun, and he heads for the sand. The car looks okay, though. We're back racing again, and it appears there's no damage done by that little excursion into the boonies. As we take a look at the standings, we'll be back after this. Telecast of the IMSA GT Series in '85. There's your leader, whipping by slower cars. There's a large speed differential between the GTP cars, such as Holbert is driving, and the slower machines in the GTO and GTU classes. Holbert now in turn 9. There's a look at Brian Redmond's Jaguar, and right beside him, Pete Halsmer in the Porsche, and look how that Porsche pulls ahead. 750 horsepower versus 650 in the Jag. good battle for second place between Halsmer and Brian Redmond, the veteran English driver. We were mentioning classes. In the GTU class, Lee Mueller leads in the Merkur. And we spoke with Lee a little bit earlier, and here's his explanation of the class.
I'm driving a GTU car. These are cars, 3 liters, normally aspirated, 2-liter turbocharged. They have aerodynamic bodywork for racing, special tires and wheels, brake systems, and safety equipment that are meant for IMSA racing.
Just because the GTU cars are smaller, that doesn't mean they're cheap. Lee was telling me it cost about $200,000 to build this car. It's the first of its type, and they are for sale in case you'd like to buy one. Look at Al Holbert enjoying his customary position in IMSA racing, that is to say, out front. Meanwhile, the battle for second place, Halsmer and Redmond. Redmond pushing hard. The veteran British driver giving Halsmer all he can take. They won at Road Atlanta, the most recent race. And we had an opportunity to speak with Brian Redmond a little bit earlier, and he gave us his thoughts about how things are in Bob Julius's Virginia-based Group 44 racing team during this 1985 season. Let's listen to Brian's comments.
The work done by the Jaguar team, that's the Group 44 team out of Winchester, Virginia, has been extensive and is ongoing all the time. We have engineers who are doing nothing else except develop systems on the cars. Specifically, we've got another 50 horsepower compared to last year. We've got more ground effect, that's the underbody side of the car pulling the car down on the ground. We've got better brakes and we've got less weight. It all adds up to a much improved racing car. Our hopes for this season are high.
Halsmer can pull him on the straights. Redmond closes up in the corners. That Jaguar handles very well. They've done a lot of work on that machine over the past few months. The battle for second and third crosses the finish line once again. There's our camera car. Mike, you've been in this position a lot of times. What's it like in there?
John, the camera does give you a pretty good idea of what the driver sees, even though you don't get any peripheral perception with the camera. Tell you what it doesn't do is it doesn't tell you how the driver feels in that cockpit. It's over 80 degrees out there today, but in the cockpit it's probably 115 to 120 degrees, so fatigue could be a factor in the race today.
And the leader is in for a pit stop. Al Holbert into the pits. The door is open. Out comes Al, and in goes Al Unser Jr. Holbert turns around and is now helping Unser Jr. secure himself with the straps. Meanwhile, the crew is hard at work. This looks like a normal pit stop. Windshield gets a little cleaning while the fuel continues to go in. Everything appears to be fitting and proper as far as the Lowenbrow Porsche team is concerned at this point. Now the door is closed. We're looking to release him. And there we go. That is a normal pit stop for the team you would expect. And Al Unser Jr. is now behind the wheel. Mike Brockman is with Al Holbert.
How's the car? It's quite good, I suppose, compared to everything else, but it's really very slippery. And, you know, I was suspecting a problem with the car, but everyone else is that slow also. So I've never been here. Turn 8's breaking up. I've never been here even in the canyon. It's been slippery.
So, but the car itself is performing well. The track is just in rough condition.
Yeah, we were really a little anxious about our fuel mileage. Looks like we're getting it. I had to back down on the revs a little bit, but we made a third of the race, so it gives us a margin if we have to run harder.
Okay, Al, are you going to get back in the car for the finish of the race?
That's the plan, yeah.
So one Al takes a breather, the other Al takes over. Al Unser Jr. at the wheel. He shares the driving with Derek Bell, who is in another race elsewhere this weekend. But Al Unser Jr., one of the top young drivers in America, already scoring an IndyCar victory. More to be heard from him. A look at the standings, and then we'll be right back after messages. Leader, that's Al Unser Jr. and Al Holbert's Porsche 962, threading his way through traffic, getting by Billy Cyphers in the red Corvette, and picking his way carefully because he doesn't want to make any mistakes in all of this traffic. There's the battle for second place. Pete Halsmer and Brian Redmond still hard at it, caught up behind traffic at the moment, but they will try to get around them in the short straightaway down to turn 7. Redmond pushing him for all he's worth. Trying, but not on this turn. Halsmer stays ahead of him. A marvelous battle for second place between these two veteran drivers, heading now towards turn 8. Redmond can't close in at this point. And when they get out on a long back straightaway, you'll see the Porsche pull away with superior horsepower. Once again, the Cinevid BF Goodrich camera car taking a look at the course the way the driver sees it. Slipping through the S's, getting by slower traffic. No, thinking better of it at this point. Doesn't want to push his luck.
John, you've really got to be careful here. You know, running through the S's when you're going at speed, there's only one line when you're really going fast, and they're closing on these slower cars at a tremendous rate of speed, so they have to be careful and not take a chance, especially when you're running in second place.
There's the leader in the GTO class, Wally Dallenbach Jr. Earlier we had a chance to talk with Wally about his car and his class.
Well, I'm driving a Ford Motorcraft Mustang with a 351 Windsor engine in it. We're driving in the GTO class, which is based on a production series, and it's got a full race chassis underneath all the fiberglass, but yet it still looks like the stock Mustang.
Jack Roush is building a whole bunch of these very strong racing cars. There is the Darren Brassfield Budweiser-sponsored machine at the wayside. Attrition has begun to set in, but back to the Jack Roush Mustangs. Roush has been building a whole bunch of these cars in his Michigan shop. This car, the 07 car, is the companion to the Jones Dallenbach machine. The teammates, Bruce Jenner and Lynn St. James, and we asked Lynn if she likes her new teammate.
Yes, I've got a new teammate, which is Bruce Jenner.
Hey, I finally found a co-driver that I can drive with, that I can give a hug and nobody giggles in the pits. You know, I can get away with that. But no, I'm very fortunate to be able to just change over to the Jack Roush and his team with Motorcraft and 711 coming in to help us out. We're real pleased. It's a real competitive car. As Lynn and I, we just drove the thing. We should be in the money. Roush is one thing he's got going for him is he's not only made a very competitive car just speed-wise, but also he's had the durability. The other car that Jack built has won every race so far this year, including the 24 hours of Daytona and 12 hours of Sebring. So, you know, say 3.5 hours on this track should be simple for our car.
And as we speak, that car is in for a driver change. Out will come Jenner, and in will go St. James. Mike, what about the difference in size between these two drivers?
Well, it does pose a little bit of a problem, but if you'll see, Lynn has put a seat insert in there. That's to take up the room and the difference between her physical size and Bruce's physical size. And that way they don't have to make steering wheel or pedal adjustments.
We're inside our camera car once again. Jim Busby at the controls, a car currently running in 4th place. Busby has brought this team along very well over the past 2 years. Last year they ran mostly in Group C2 in the World Endurance Championship in Europe. Now they're in this country in the big time, so to speak, with these Porsche 962s. Now we had an opportunity a little bit earlier for Mike Brockman to discuss why these cars are different than the other cars running. These cars have different kinds of tires for the BF Goodrich people, and Mike is about to explain that.
Does this look like the tire on your street car? Well, of course it doesn't, but believe it or not, this tire is built to Department of Transportation specifications. Now, BF Goodrich uses racing as a test bed for their street tire development, and this tire has the exact same construction as a radial Comptier that you could buy at a BF Goodrich dealer. Now, even though this tire won't fit underneath the fender of your street car, it's comforting to know that the engineers are out there doing development for your street driving and your street safety.
That's the leader, Al Unser Jr. and Al Holbert's Porsche. Holbert, of course, the owner of one of the top teams in IMSA. We had the opportunity to get to know Al a little bit better, and this IMSA driver profile. Al Holbert is a 3-time series champion and the current points leader. Born not long after World War II, he makes his home base in Warrington, Pennsylvania, where he has a Porsche Audi dealership. Al driving in a car quite different from the one that he races on tracks all over North America. It's a lovely sylvan setting, the Holbert homestead, and Al Holbert is very much a family man. He enjoys the support of his lovely wife, Joy. It can't be easy being a racing driver's wife with all the travel and that danger involved. And he has 2 young children, and son Todd, daughter Lori. Al has always known what he wanted to do.
I never knew much other than racing as a kid. I was involved in Little League for a bit, and of course, being from a country school, we didn't have intramural sports or anything, just playground, and I never got involved in Saturday morning basketball, so I spent pretty much my whole time growing up hang around the body shop or working in the workshop. My mother worked in the dealership at all times, and motor racing was just, because my dad started in '51, all I ever knew.
Yes. Al is indeed the son of a famous father. Bob Hobart was one of the pioneers of American sports car racing. He carved out his reputation when it was an amateur sport, not the professional pursuit that it is today. For Bob Hobart, it was always a family affair.
We all went to the races together, and Al was always helping out with the car, and of course at that time he was good with the polishing cloth. And so, you know, when he got into later on, after he finished school and so forth, Al said to me one day that you know, he liked sports car racing, but he knew we had a business. We had to run the automobile business, but he wouldn't know if he could do it if he didn't try. He said, just, you know, let's take a 914, he said, and we'll campaign it in the FCCA series, and just for a year. So I agreed. I said, well, you know, why not? So, you know, unfortunately or unfortunately, right away Al was a pretty good driver, and so it just went from there.
Not only is he a great driver, but he's an accomplished engineer, builder, and designer of racing cars. And Al takes a hands-on approach, supervising all aspects of the preparation of his racing machines. He takes care of business on the track and in business. Al Hobart, one of the great drivers of the IMSA series. And that's his team car out in front here at Riverside. We'll be back after these messages. Sports news program is right here on ESPN. 3 times a day you can tune in for all the late-breaking news, highlights, and scores from around the sports world. Check your local listings for times in your area. And we're at Riverside for round 5 of the IMSA GT Series. There is your leader, the car co-driven by Al Unser Jr. and Al Hobart. In second place currently is the car co-driven by Pete Halsmer and John Morton. And in third place, the Jaguar, co-driven by Brian Redman and Hurley Haywood. Those are your top 3 runners currently here at Riverside this afternoon. Al Unser Jr. behind. There's a spin off the course in the S's. That's a car driven by John Klug and Lou Sell, the number 90 Porsche 935, pulling off, looks like it stopped, raising a cloud of dust as it does. There again is the race for second place. Brian Redman pulling in front. Jaguar now leading the Porsche. Looking strong at this point, pulling away. This race has been going on throughout the course of the event. Normally aspirated V12 engine pulling that white and green car, one of the most attractive cars on the circuit. The BF Goodrich Porsche won't let him go, however. Still dogging his trail as they go by slower traffic. Out on the long back straight, and there's a look from inside our camera car, the car co-driven by Jim Busby and Rick Newp. The straightaway where they hit speeds of 185 miles an hour, heading toward the left-hand kink. The Jaguar once again now comfortably in second place for the moment. And there is a spin. The car has gone up in the S's and comes to rest in the middle of the track, producing a big, huge dust cloud there. This could be a dangerous situation because you can see it's obscuring the vision. The car is just sitting there. Cars are approaching, and there's a bad hit, a bad accident. He hit that thing a ton. Now a third car is involved. Mike Brockman.
John, the Camaro was stuck right in the racing line, and it looked to me like 2 GTU cars were racing, came into the cloud of dust, didn't slow down, or certainly didn't slow down enough, and ran into the Camaro that was sitting right in the racing line.
The 94 car driven by Kerry Eisenlohr, the 48 car driven by Frank Hansowitz. Hansowitz climbing out, Eisenlohr beginning to. Hansowitz pulling himself out.
John, if you'll see the roll bars in these GT cars, these cars are pretty substantial, so hopefully, even though it was an incredible impact, these drivers weren't hurt too badly.
There's the emergency sign being given for an emergency vehicle to come out. Now let's take a second look at this. The car, this is the Les Lindley Lisa Caceres Camaro, comes to rest.
You see these three cars they got through before the cloud totally obliterated the track, and then these two cars were racing into that situation, didn't slow down, and just had an incredible crash.
What an impact that was. Very tough. This is in slow motion. We'll take a second look. Wow. They hit that thing a ton. Then the third car gets into the back of the second car. And the driver being attended to, that's Lisa Caceres driving in that car. The ambulance pulling onto the scene. This could be serious. You could well see how hard that car was hit. And the emergency workers are coming to take care of the driver, Lisa Caceres. We don't know her condition, obviously, at this point, but we'll keep you posted. We hope that it's not serious. Meanwhile, there is a full yellow out all around the course. The pace car is out.
John, can you believe that? The car in second place, the Redmond car, just got hit in the rear by a BMW. I can't believe the driver didn't slow down. You can see the debris on the track. Just an incredible situation.
So we have a series of events here. Lisa Caceres on the stretcher being put into the ambulance. She'll be taken to a Riverside hospital to be examined. And we'll keep you updated on her condition. There's the yellow flag. There's Brian Redmond's Jaguar. They're taking the bodywork off.
They're putting a new tail section on there. He got hit pretty good. I don't know if there's any further damage other than the bodywork.
Meanwhile, everybody's taking advantage of the yellow for pit stops.
This has to be an incredibly bad luck situation. This Jaguar's been racing all day with Halsmer and Morton in the Porsche, and to have a situation like this under a yellow, it's just unbelievable.
And off on the end of the hook goes the Les Lindley Lisa Caceres car. An unfortunate end to their racing day. The pace car is out. Everybody is lined up behind it. Al Unser on the point. They'll move around now at a relatively slow pace while the debris is cleaned off the track and all of the emergency vehicles are moved to a safe place. And we'll be back following these messages. The pace car holding the field behind it as debris is being cleaned up from that accident. We're looking from the inside of our camera car, the BFG Jim Busby Rick Knoop car, as they warm up their tires or try to keep them warm because they've been going quite slowly. As a matter of fact, Al Unser Jr. in the lead Porsche has been running up on the pace car, trying to urge him to go faster. These cars are not made to go slowly. Attrition rate, 20 cars out of the 62 cars that started this event have now dropped out of the picture. Of course, one of the most important ones, the John Paul Jr. machine, that March Buick that went so quickly very early on. The pace car is off. We're back to racing. The green is out once again. Al Unser Jr. putting the pedal to the metal and already pulling out a lead over the rest of the field. That Porsche is such a strong machine, prepared in Al Holbert's Warrington, PA shop. Already, look at that gap that he's built up over the other cars in the field. Al Holbert streaking out, or Al Unser Jr., I should say, in Holbert's car. And wait a minute, he slowed down on the back straight. Another car just passed him. There could be some problem with that car. Maybe it was something that occurred during that slow period behind the pace car. But in the meantime, he is going less than racing speed. We'll expect him now in the pits. Coming around turn 9. Yes, he is. He's heading for the pits. Al Unser Jr. bringing car number 14 in.
Yeah, I spoke with Al Holbert. Holbert said they were having some problems keeping the engine clean when they were running under the yellows. So they're going to take the back off the car. Looks like they're going to look in the motor section. This is not a routine pit stop. John, the technicians are pouring cold water over this turbo. The heat that is generated by these turbochargers is incredible, so they're pouring that cold water over there so they can work on it. They're obviously going to change the turbo. The technicians from Andile are some of the best, but I tell you, if they're going to change the turbo, they're definitely out of this race.
Grim frustration in the Holbert pits, joy just down the way in the B.F. Goodrich pits, because we now find both B.F. Goodrich cars out in front. The Pete Halsmer John Morton machine is leading, and our camera car with Jim Busby and Rick Knoop aboard are in second place. Once again, Al Holbert's bad luck concerning Riverside takes over. He has never won an IMSA race at this course. Right now, the two BFG Porsches, 1-2, and nobody seems to be approaching them, nobody challenging them at the moment. Let's take a look at the view from inside the second place car, the Jim Busby Rick Knoop machine. A very happy situation for them at the moment, but not so happy in the Al Holbert pits, where Mike Brockman is with Al Unser Jr.
Al, you were leading the race, you're sitting in first place. What happened?
I think their turbo went away. Under the caution there, I was having problems keeping the engine cleaned out. It kept loading up on me, so I had to keep cleaning it out. And so something happened to the turbo now once we took off.
Now, is this a problem? You think they can replace the turbo and get you back out there?
Yeah, that's what we're doing right now.
Here's a look now at the leader of the Camel Light class. This is a brand new class this year in IMSA racing. And for an update on what the class is about, here's Bill Olson.
I'm driving in the Camel Light series. It is a Camel GTP car that has to weigh 700 kilos, that's 1,540 pounds, and uses a production-based engine of 3 liters or less. That's about 180 cubic inches.
The Camel Light category is an up-and-coming one. IMSA GT racing, these cars are real race cars, but they are less expensive to produce and to maintain. A look at the leader. And here are the standings. We'll be Riverside after this. Hospital, Lisa Caceres has not been seriously injured in that crash. A long turbo fix for the Al Holbert car, but it's now going back out onto the track. And there, the third place car, David Hobbs, Bruce Levin, pulling over to the side. The hazard lights on, pulling off the track surface. Looks like they are finished for the day. They're out on the back part of the course. That's the third place car, and they are now pulling off. And we look at the leader, the B.F. Goodrich Porsche, now making a pit stop. Now down to Mike Brockman in the pits.
John, with Hobbs and Levin out, it's given these B.F. Goodrich cars a comfortable margin. Pete Halsmer's coming in. He's letting John Morton get in the car. It's a final driver change. They're taking on fuel. Now remember, their team car has inherited the lead, but they still have to make their final pit stop.
That BMW up against the turn 6 wall is a car co-driven by Steve Wilson and Mike Diedel. And our leaders, once again, looking strong at this point in the race, heading through the S's toward that turn 6 area, having to maneuver around the red Porsche. And the second B.F. Goodrich car now moves out of the pits following a routine pit stop. Nobody is currently challenging these cars. Rick Knoop now behind the wheel of the B.F. Goodrich Porsche 962. There we go, hurtling down the straightaway, looking for a way through the traffic and peering through the oil-smeared windshield. Moves by a Camel Lights car. That's the Jim Downing John Mafucci machine right ahead of us there. Onto the straight, and now horsepower tells. Now down to Mike Brockman with John Bishop.
John, what does the future hold in store for GTP racing in the States?
Well, I think Grand Touring prototype cars like these are going to continue to find favor with the public, with the manufacturers, and all the supporting industry. They're exciting cars, they're state-of-the-art, as you know, and ground effects. We feel in the future we got to bring the power back on the top end a little bit to sort of even up the chances for some of the smaller engine cars. But I think we have many years of GTP racing to look forward to.
Our congratulations to John Bishop and to all the people of the IMSA organization on a very successful 15-year career. This race today marks their 600th event, and that is a milestone under any circumstances. We are back aboard the Porsche 962 camera car, and look there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, that bright red light. That is a warning light. That could very well be either fuel or low oil pressure. We'll keep an eye on that, but that warning light could be significant. There it's blinking again. There's their pit crew standing by, so it could be the fuel light. Perhaps they are making ready for a pit stop. We'll keep an eye on this closely. While tension builds for the leader, here's the companion car. This is now being driven by John Morton, and he is heading down the back straightaway under the Bosch bridge. Appears to be running with no problems whatsoever. But our thoughts are with Busby. John Morton, of course, a veteran driver. I can remember back in the early 60s when he was driving for Pete Brock. Right now we're back inside the Jim Busby machine. That red light continues to blink. Strong reminder to get that car into the pits before long. He's pulling now down to the right, slowing down. So we do expect him to head for the pits at this point. And he does. Pit lane, his destination. And the crew is ready.
John, this was an anticipated pit stop. When Halsmer and Morton made their stop and their driver change, they knew that Knoop and Busby had to come in. This is right on schedule. They're going to put Knoop in the car. They're taking on their final fuel, fresh tires. This is exactly what had been planned.
And now the new leader, John Morton in the number 68 BF Goodrich Porsche 962. A look at the standings, and we'll be back at Riverside after this. Closing moments of the 5th round of the IMSA GT Series. And I'm John Burchard along with Mike Brockman, enjoying a sunny afternoon in California as those two cars are enjoying it, the two BF Goodrich cars out in front. And here in the pits is Mike Brockman to talk with one of the co-drivers of the leading car, Pete Halsmer.
This is quite an accomplishment for BF Goodrich and for you and John Morton.
It really is. You know, John and I just get out there and drive it, and the guys have made the thing work so good. Phil and Jim Busby, the team manager, the operator. I'm looking. Gary Pace with BF Goodrich. I can't say thanks enough to all these guys. You know, there's a lot of racing left, though, so we'll see what happens. It's working great so far.
Now that you've gone into first place, or when you went into first place, did your strategy change?
No, we're just, you know, our strategy is just to run as hard as we can feel like we can run without bouncing off too many things, and see where that puts us most of the way through the race, and hopefully it'll keep working for us.
What about the condition of the track, Peter?
It's a little bad in a couple of spots, but really it's in pretty good shape. It's a little slick, it's hot, you know, there's a lot of rubber from a lot of cars running, so it's what you'd expect, really.
Conversation with Pete Halsmer, and there's his co-driver John Morton now out in front. That red tape across the right headlight identifies that car for the pit crew. There's a look at the first place car from the second place car. The team running in tandem, running just like a train, being very careful in these closing stages of the event. We're into the final lap, and the drivers have turned the headlights on. You've heard of the slogan, lights on for safety? Well, this is lights on for celebration, because there are some happy people at BF Goodrich today. These twin cars coming home to a 1-2 victory as soon as they can cross that start-finish line. And this, of course, is the first victory for BF Goodrich. They've taken on the major tire company, and this will be especially sweet for them to beat them in big-time GTP competition. A look from inside the second place car. They are not racing each other. There is no drama in this. They are just forming up close together so that they can cross the finish line in picture-perfect fashion. You'll be darn sure that they are very careful about getting by these slower cars. Very careful at this point. The last time down the long Riverside back straight. Forming up, getting closer together, and moving through turn 9 one last time. John Morton in the lead car, Rick Knoop in the second car, and here they come to take the checkered flag. They have won the Riverside GT. There's your third place car, some 5 laps down. That's the Jaguar, co-driven by Bob Tullius and young Chip Robinson. The white and green car, your third place finisher. unofficially, of course, at this point. The veteran Bob Tullius, who runs the team, and the young New Jersey driver out of Formula Super V, Chip Robinson, co-driving. And they come across the finish line in third place after winning the last race at Road Atlanta for Group 44. We're now on the cool-off lap, and some happy guys aboard the BFG cars. We'll be back to talk to the winners and look at final results after this. Riverside, California, and a couple of California drivers are enjoying themselves thoroughly on their victory lap. John Morton and Rick Knoop. That's Rick Knoop with the enthusiastic hand gestures. You can tell this young man is pleased with the way the afternoon has gone. These two BF Goodrich cars came to the front and finished in formation. An exciting day for the BF Goodrich team. Now they're looking forward to more victories, I'm sure. The two cars slowing down to head into pit lane to be greeted by a jubilant crew that Jim Busby has put together and has brought to this point. And there is the view from out of Rick Knoop's window as he sees a lot of people wishing him well. Now the cars swarmed over by the crew. Everybody enjoying themselves thoroughly. They will be taking a trip to Victory Lane in short order. There is a part of that crowd, more than 45,000 people. Let's check the unofficial results. There are your first three places. Now, if we can, let's go to our pal Mike Brockman down in Victory Circle as he talks with a couple of very happy young men.
I'm with Pete Halsmer and John Morton. I can't think of two guys who deserve a win more. You've done an incredible job. You've been nipping at it all year. You had BF Goodrich on the front row, and now you've won it.
Well, we sure have. It's been an awful long time, but this car ran flawlessly with these BF Goodrich tires. We had just no trouble, and I'm so thankful I can't tell you.
Well, both you guys did a flawless job.
Thanks, Mike. I can't ask for a better guy to drive for me. You know, the only thing I was concerned about was if something happened to the car. John is just a super driver. I'm really happy to be able to drive with him. The BF Goodrich people, Busby's operation, the crew, you couldn't ask for a better deal.
At any point during the race, did you have a problem?
Right at the very end, about the last 10 laps, we had a little exhaust leak, but it wasn't much of a problem unless our teammates had pushed us real hard.
Well, it was a well-deserved win for both you guys, for the Busby team and for BF Goodrich, and for Porsche.
Thanks, Mike. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's the Busby team just did a fabulous. We have never dropped out of a race with a mechanical problem yet. And we had Sebring one and broke, and now we won one.
Okay, two great winners, Pete Halsmer and John Morton.
And I'd like to add my congratulations, too, to a pair of very deserving drivers. These are the final standings, the two BF Goodrich cars, followed by the Jaguar, Bob Tullius and Chip Robinson. In fourth place, Bob Aiken's Porsche 962. And Jim Adams' car in fifth. There's the Camel Light class and the GTO category. And finally, the winners in GTU. And now the point standings after this Riverside event. Tightened up considerably now. Rick Knoop moving up to third place. This has been a super day of racing here in Southern California. And this IMSA GT event has been brought to you by BF Goodrich, makers of high-performance TA radials. We make cars perform. Our congratulations to the winners once again. This is John Burchard for Mike Brockman. So long from Riverside, California. This has been a Cinevin Enterprises presentation produced in association with ESPN.